Hello, my name is Lloyd Chapman, President and founder of the American Small Business League, and we're here shooting a little video about an SBA policy we're trying to kill. And I thought I would tell a little story, put it on YouTube and our website. So when preparing for the American Small Business League's national campaign to oppose the SBA's attempt to put hundreds of information technology value-added resellers out of business by changing the size standard, I started going online and I found some stories from 2003 and 2004, and it's interesting. So here's a story from Computer Reseller News in 2003 titled "With Government Contract Size Does Matter." It's a story about me, and it's a story about how I noticed that the government is giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. I got a congressional investigation. I testified before Congress. The Associated Press wrote a story about it, and it ran in 40 newspapers across the country. And I would say as a result of that, hundreds of millions, if not billions, in federal contracts that were going to large corporations were redirected to legitimate small businesses. And then here's a story from Computer Reseller News what is this? This is May 20th, 2004, titled "VARs Protests SBA's Delay on Proposed Changes to Small Business Label." And this is a story about how the SBA tried to increase the size standard on information technology value-added resellers from 100 to 500, and how I launched a national campaign to get the highest numbers of comments in history, stopping that, and I forced them from raising it from 100 to 500, and they only raised it up to 150. So I would imagine that thousands of companies in the last decade or so have been able to compete for federal small business contracts as a result of my efforts. About that same time, Washington Technology wrote a story about me, and I think that one was called "Small Business Deals Under Investigation." Had a big picture of me and talked about how the General Accounting Office had launched an investigation based upon my information that uncovered thousands of large businesses getting federal small business contracts. In 2005, Entrepreneur Magazine wrote a story about me that compared me to a modern-day Cesar Chavez for small businesses. And quite frankly, when those stories had come out, my accomplishments were fairly minimal. Since then, I've won 30 federal lawsuits on behalf of small businesses exposing fraud and abuse in federal small business contracting. I think I've done, over 30 national television appearances on major news programs, again, championing small businesses that work with the government contractors. I've done 100 radio shows. I've probably released in the last decade, maybe 400 press releases. I've probably written 500 blogs. My staff tells me there's 700 stories on the internet about Lloyd Chapman, the American Small Business League. And so I've been on, radio, television, won 30 lawsuits. I've got a bill in Congress, H.R. 1622, that'll stop the government from giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. A few weeks ago, American Express named me one of the 4 strongest voices for small business in America. And yet here's the funny thing. None of these magazines have written a story about me in a decade. So when I first got started and I got a congressional investigation and forced the SBA to reduce the size standard on information technology value-added reseller from 500 to 150, I'm all over the place, right? I was in Inc. magazine and, But when that story came out in 2005 in Entrepreneur Magazine that said I might be a modern-day Cesar Chavez for small businesses, my life changed in a month. Since that day, that was about 9 years ago, none of the magazines that have written stories about me or wrote stories about me in the past have done any stories about me. So to this day, I think I'm the biggest champion for small businesses that work with the government contractors, particularly IT firms. Most of my members are in the IT industry because when I started, it was the Microcomputer Industry Suppliers Association. But clearly, there's an effort on the part of some entity out there, I'm not sure who it is, but it's probably the government, that doesn't want you to read what I write, doesn't want you to see me on television, doesn't want you to hear me on the radio. And if I were you, I would try to get any publication in the IT industry to do more stories about the American Small Business League and what we've done. So here's what I say. You know, Yogi Bear said, "It ain't bragging if you can do it." That's my favorite thing. I say that all the time. And I say I'm the strongest advocate for small businesses that work with the government in America. And if you disagree with me, find anyone in America that's done more national television talking about small business issues than me. You won't. You can't find that person. In fact, here's a bold claim. If you look at all the groups, particularly out of Washington, that claim to represent small businesses, try to find one national television appearance from anyone that claims to represent small businesses, the NFIB, the National Small Business Association, Women Impacting Public Policy, you know, the U.S. Chamber, any group. Find one video, one in a decade, of them going on national television complaining about the SBA budget being cut, attempts to close the SBA, access to capital for small businesses being cut, the diversion of federal small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. Find one video by anybody other than me. And I don't think there is one. I think there's, Raul Espinoza, a guy I know in Florida. I think he's on one of the videos I've done. I think that's the only other person. So go to SBL website and go to YouTube and look at what I've done. And I just want you to notice that no one but me has ever been on national television fighting for small businesses that work with the government contractors. Not that I've ever seen. And I think that makes me the biggest advocate in America for small businesses. And if that's true, I think you should back the American Small Business League in our efforts to help you, because we're all that you've got. And again, if you disagree with that, my phone number is 707-789-9575. lchapman@asbl.com. Call me, send me an email, and show me someone from any other group in a decade on national television opposing the diversion of federal small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms, for example. But again, you won't be able to. So back the American Small Business League. We're in your corner. My name's Lloyd Chapman, President, founder of the American Small Business League. Thank you.